var kæreste med Lady Diana. Altså
Hun stopper som supermodel, går fra.
In the summer of 1983, a teenage girl with unruly blonde hair and barely any makeup stood in front of a camera in Milan, uncertain, untrained, and utterly unaware that within weeks her face would be on the cover of Vogue. By the end of the year, she would become the most photographed woman in Europe, hailed as the next Brigitte Bardot, and courted by fashion's most powerful empires. She didn't chase fame. Fame chased her and devoured her with the quiet fury only the fashion world knows. This was not the story of a girl hungry for the catwalk. In fact, she had dreams of becoming a psychologist, but life had other plans. She was spotted at a concert in Aarhus by chance, and within months the Danish teenager with a soft voice and unshakable shyness was jet-setting between Paris and New York, her image splashed across magazines, billboards, and the fever dreams of a billion-dollar industry. But what happens when a girl who never wanted the spotlight becomes the face of a decade? What happens when innocence becomes a commodity and beauty becomes a weapon? Reneé Simonsen didn't just rise, she became a phenomenon. And then, almost as suddenly, she walked away. Tonight, we uncover the story of the woman who conquered the fashion world before she even understood it, and the price she paid to reclaim herself. Long before her face became synonymous with European glamour, Reneé Toft Simonsen was just a quiet girl growing up in the modest port town of Aarhus, Denmark. Born on May 12, 1965, she was the eldest of 4 siblings in a working-class family. Her father was a carpenter, her mother a cleaner, a pair of honest blue-collar Danes who valued simplicity, stability, and decency above all else. Their lives revolved around the rhythms of hard work and quiet evenings, and they expected nothing different for their children. But even in that unassuming setting, there was something about Reneé that stood out. Her beauty was not the polished, artificial kind the fashion world worshipped. It was raw, sun-kissed, and impossibly effortless. Yet she never saw herself that way. If anything, Reneé grew up believing she was too awkward, too shy, too ordinary. Her introversion was mistaken for aloofness. Her quiet nature, a sign of weakness. She didn't fit in with the louder, more outgoing girls at school, and she had no desire to. Instead, she buried herself in books, literature, psychology, philosophy. These were her sanctuaries. She dreamed of becoming a child psychologist, of helping kids navigate a world she often found too sharp, too demanding. Modelling was not only absent from her plans, it felt absurd. Her idols weren't actresses or singers, but thinkers and writers. While other girls pinned posters of pop stars to their bedroom walls, Reneé underlined quotes in Søren Kierkegaard and scribbled introspections in worn-out notebooks. Her upbringing shaped her in quiet, powerful ways. Denmark in the 1970s was a place of contrasts, socially progressive, yet deeply traditional. While women were gaining new freedoms, conservative values still clung to small-town life. Beauty, especially in young women, was seen as both an asset and a threat admired, but also controlled, never fully trusted. Girls like Reneé, who were beautiful but reserved, were often misunderstood. They were told to be more outgoing, more assertive, more ambitious. But Reneé didn't want to shine. She wanted to blend in. The attention her looks brought made her uncomfortable. On walks through Aarhus, strangers would stare. Some whispered, others approached. It didn't flatter her, it unsettled her. It made her feel like her body had become public property, something to be commented on, judged claimed. She began to resent her own reflection. Behind the angelic face was a girl desperate to be invisible. Despite this, she excelled in school. Her teachers praised her for her intellect and emotional depth. Friends, though few and carefully chosen, described her as warm, loyal, and quietly fierce in her convictions. She wasn't the type to follow trends or crave popularity. If anything, she recoiled from anything that felt performative. Even at a young age, Reneé had a deep sensitivity to authenticity and an almost prophetic discomfort with surface-level admiration. And yet that very surface would soon catapult her into a world built entirely on appearances. Because one night at a music concert, she had reluctantly agreed to attend a photographer saw in her what the fashion world would soon crave, a face that felt both familiar and unreachable, soft yet commanding, European yet universal. That was the moment everything changed. But before the lights, before the runways, before the headlines, there was just a Danish girl who wanted to study to help others and to disappear into the comfort of an ordinary life. It began on a night she never planned. Reneé had no intention of standing out. The concert she attended in Aarhus was supposed to be a break from her routine, a rare act of rebellion for a girl who usually kept her head low. She was 17 still, a student still dreaming of psychology books and quiet evenings. She had no makeup on, wore jeans and a simple t-shirt. But amidst the crowd, a man noticed her Siegfried Hartmann, a Danish photographer with a keen eye and a hunch for future icons. He approached with the kind of confidence she lacked. He didn't speak in compliments, he spoke in potential. "You have the face," he said simply. "You don't know it yet, but you do." She laughed it off at first, assuming it was a joke. But Siegfried was insistent. He wasn't just another man enchanted by her beauty. He was an insider, and he saw something rare, a girl who didn't know how captivating she was. At first she refused. Modelling felt like a betrayal of everything she valued: intellect, depth, humility. Her mother was sceptical, her teachers even more so. But something about Siegfried's calm confidence stirred a question inside her. What if there was more to this than vanity? What if stepping into that world could be temporary, an experiment, a test of her courage? Reluctantly, she agreed to do a test shoot. The results were electric. Her innocence wasn't a flaw, it was the asset. She didn't pose, she simply was, and the camera devoured her. Within weeks, agencies in Copenhagen called. By summer, she was on a flight to Milan. No training, no runway lessons, no personal stylist, just a teenager with a shy smile and an intuitive understanding of stillness. Her arrival in Milan was nothing like the fashion fairy tales. She was thrown into castings with girls who had been groomed for this since childhood. They spoke multiple languages, had agents, entourages, and practiced runway walks in front of mirrors since they were 10. Reneé felt out of place. She didn't know how to walk in heels, how to pose for designers, or how to flirt with photographers. She was too quiet, too Danish, too unpolished. And yet, that's exactly why she stood out. The fashion world in the early 1980s was shifting. It was growing tired of the overly made-up, overly dramatic models of the late 70s. Designers and magazines began searching for a different kind of beauty, natural, youthful, spontaneous. Reneé embodied all of that. She wasn't pretending to be anything, she simply was. Her first major booking came almost by accident. Elle France needed a fresh face for a last-minute editorial. Renée's name was suggested as a wild card. When the editor saw her Polaroids, she paused. "She looks like she doesn't know how beautiful she is," the editor whispered. "That's exactly what we need." The shoot was a revelation. Renée's vulnerability became her power. Her gaze wasn't trained, it was honest. The photographers were mesmerized. Her pictures didn't scream. They whispered, and the world listened. Within a month, she was on the cover of Elle. Within 3 months, Vogue came calling. Her career didn't climb, it catapulted. She became the youngest model to grace the cover of multiple European editions of Vogue in a single year. Her face appeared in ads for L'Oréal, Revlon, and Dior. Karl Lagerfeld called her a perfect contradiction, soft and sharp, angelic and worldly. Gianni Versace offered her exclusives. She was barely 18. But back home in Aarhus, things hadn't caught up. Her family still lived in the same small apartment. Her mother still cleaned offices. Her younger siblings still fought over the TV. And Reneé, now in Paris hotel rooms and New York lofts, was still writing in her journal, questioning the surreal speed of it all. She hadn't sought this life. But now that it had chosen her, she wondered, could she ride this wave without losing herself? By 1984, Reneé Simonsen had become more than a model. She was a symbol, not of extravagance or excess, but of a new kind of femininity. While other models strutted in opulence, Reneé stood out by simply existing. Her quiet gaze, wind-blown hair, and the unforced elegance of her movements created an archetype the fashion world didn't know it needed, the girl who wasn't trying to seduce the camera, yet did. Her breakthrough wasn't just measured in magazine covers, though there were plenty. In less than 2 years, she graced the front pages of Vogue, Elle Harper's, Bazaar and Cosmopolitan. Photographers like Helmut Newton, Arthur Elgort and Peter Lindbergh lined up to work with her. Each claimed her presence changed the atmosphere of a shoot. She didn't pose, she listened, absorbed, responded. She wasn't a canvas, she was a collaborator. But it was the 1985 L'Oréal campaign that marked her global arrival. Because You're Worth It became more than a slogan, it became Renée's personal mythology. With a soft Danish accent and a magnetic sincerity, she looked straight into the camera and redefined beauty for millions of women watching. Not just beauty in appearance, but beauty in uncertainty, vulnerability, and quiet strength. Overnight, she became the face of empowerment without aggression. Paris wanted her, Milan adored her, New York crowned her. But even in the glitter of success, Reneé carried the weight of dissonance. She wasn't at home in the role of a star. Fame felt more like a costume than a destiny. In backstage rooms and five-star suites, she often sat in silence while others celebrated around her. How could someone so celebrated feel so alienated? Her schedule became inhuman. Flights every 3 days, shoots that lasted 18 hours. No privacy, no pause. Her name alone could sell a collection. Designers scheduled their entire runway calendars around her availability. Gianni Versace once delayed a major campaign by 2 weeks, just so Reneé could appear in the shoot. Karl Lagerfeld, never one for sentiment, confessed in an interview, "She's the only one who doesn't care about fashion, and that's why she owns it." Yet it was the camera that loved her most. In one of her most iconic editorials shot by Herb Ritts on the cliffs of Malibu, she stood barefoot in a torn white shirt, her hair whipping in the wind. There were no props, no makeup team, no elaborate styling, and just Reneé and the sea. The image became a sensation. Critics called it the moment the 1980s exhaled. It was raw, intimate, and defiant of the industry's artificiality. But perhaps what made Renée's rise so unique was her resistance to it. She refused to move permanently to New York or Paris. She returned to Denmark between jobs. She declined reality TV offers. She rarely gave interviews. While other supermodels embraced celebrity, Reneé protected her solitude. The fashion world tried to turn her into an icon. She insisted on remaining a person. And yet, in doing so, she became even more iconic. Her mystery was her magnet. Fans projected fantasies onto her, a Danish enchantress who walked away from the flashbulbs before they burned her. Other models called her the reluctant queen. Designers compared her to a Nordic myth, beautiful, distant, unknowable. She was offered film roles, book deals, brand collaborations worth millions. She walked away from most of them. Her power lay in saying no. In an era obsessed with more fame, more money, more attention, Renée's restraint was radical. In 1986, she was voted Model of the Year by multiple fashion publications across Europe and the US. Yet when she received the news, she was alone in a hotel room in Paris, packing to fly home. Her reaction wasn't euphoria, it was fatigue. She scribbled in her diary, "They think I've arrived, but I feel more lost than ever." She had conquered the industry without ever surrendering to it, and perhaps that's why the cracks had already begun to show. In an era when supermodels were expected to transform into brand ambassadors, lifestyle icons, and media darlings, Reneé Simonsen did something unthinkable. She resisted becoming a product. Her difference wasn't loud or rebellious. It was quiet, deliberate, and all the more radical because of it. While other models curated public personas, Reneé remained unapologetically undefined. She never tried to be the girl next door, the vamp, or the IT girl. She was never seen in nightclubs, didn't chase tabloid attention, and refused to be photographed without purpose. She wasn't building a brand, she was defending her selfhood. When her peers capitalized on their rising fame with fragrance lines and clothing collections, Reneé turned down endorsements that didn't align with her ethics. One offer came from a global cosmetics brand that promised her 7 figures and a 3-year campaign. She declined. "I don't want my face to tell lies," she told her agent. The industry was baffled. Editors called her elusive. Designers found her unpredictable. But beneath the surface, Reneé was quietly rewriting the rules of what a model could be, not a mannequin, not a celebrity puppet, but a person with boundaries. Her refusal to relocate permanently to a fashion capital was already seen as controversial. She insisted on living in Denmark between shoots. This wasn't nostalgia, it was survival. "The further I stay from the madness," she once said, "the longer I can stay sane." Unlike many of her peers who drowned in excess and burnout, Reneé drew invisible lines between her career and her core. One of her boldest moves came in 1986 when she published an open letter in a Danish magazine criticizing the modelling industry's obsession with sexualizing young girls. She wrote, "Not as a celebrity, but as a witness. I was 17 when they painted my lips and asked me to look like I wanted it. I didn't know what it was. I just did what they told me. Now I know better, and I want younger girls to know better too." The letter stirred controversy. Some praised her bravery, others accused her of biting the hand that fed her. But Reneé wasn't trying to destroy the industry. She was demanding it evolve. She became an unexpected voice of conscience in a world that rarely tolerated dissent from within. Her difference was also visible on the runway. While others strutted with fierceness and flair, Reneé moved with poise and distance. She didn't perform, she floated. There was no hunger in her walk, no seduction in her gaze. She gave the audience nothing they expected and everything they needed: authenticity. Even her fashion choices stood apart. She favoured minimalism over extravagance, natural tones over glitter, and silhouettes that spoke more of comfort than conquest. Designers began adjusting their collections for her. Photographers let her bring her own clothes to shoots. Her presence altered the creative direction of entire campaigns. But perhaps her greatest act of defiance came in the form of a decision no one saw coming. She enrolled in university at the height of her fame. While her face still graced magazine covers, she was attending lectures in psychology and sociology in Copenhagen. Her classmates were stunned. She didn't talk about modelling, one recalled. She was just a student, brilliant, focused, introverted. When asked why she did it, Reneé answered simply, "Because this is who I was before the cameras, and it's who I'll be after." That sentence, soft yet resolute, summed up her philosophy. Reneé Simonsen never fought the system with slogans or spectacle. She did it by staying intact. While the world turned her into a myth, she quietly reclaimed her narrative, word by word, boundary by boundary. In doing so, She challenged the very idea of success in fashion. Maybe it wasn't about lasting the longest or becoming the richest or being remembered the most. Maybe it was about leaving with your soul intact. In 1988, at just 23 years old, Reneé Simonsen disappeared from fashion. No scandal, no farewell shoot, no teary runway goodbye. One day, she was the face of European beauty. The next, she was gone. The silence, more than any headline, left the industry shaken. And it wasn't until years later that the truth began to emerge, not of disgrace, but of survival. Behind the serene smile and Vogue covers, Reneé had been unravelling. Her diary entries from that time later, published in fragments, reveal a young woman haunted by the growing chasm between who she was and who the world demanded she be. She suffered from panic attacks, often minutes before runway shows. Her heart would race, her hands would tremble, and she would have to fight back the urge to run. "They think I'm calm," she wrote, "but inside I am screaming." The world had loved an image she no longer recognised. Every magazine cover widened the gap. Each endorsement stripped away a little more of her identity. She feared that if she stayed, there would be nothing left of the girl who once wanted to help children not sell lipstick. But it wasn't just internal struggle. Her romantic life, too, was becoming public property. Her high-profile relationship with pop singer Stefan Waggershausen, who was nearly 20 years her senior, became fodder for tabloids. The press obsessed over the age gap, the supposed power imbalance, and their on-again, off-again drama. What no one knew was that Reneé in private was spiralling. Between the photo shoots and public appearances, she was losing weight rapidly. Sleep became impossible. She began to question reality itself. Was she a person or a product, a name or a vessel? In 1987, she suffered a nervous breakdown during a shoot in New York. The camera crew had set up on a rooftop. The light was perfect, the team ready. Reneé froze. She couldn't move. "I don't know how to be me anymore," she whispered before collapsing to the floor. She was taken to a hospital. The diagnosis: exhaustion, anxiety disorder, and depression. It was her breaking point. The doctors prescribed rest. The agents prescribed more photo shoots. She chose silence. Without a press release or public statement, Reneé returned to Denmark, to trees, to bookstores, to anonymity. The girl who once graced every major magazine cover in Europe enrolled again in university, this time for good. She studied psychology, the dream she'd shelved for fame. This time she clung to it like a lifeline. For a while the media searched for her. Photographers camped outside her family's home in Aarhus. Tabloids speculated. Was she pregnant? Was she broke? Had she joined a cult? But Reneé offered no answers. No scandal, just distance. In the years that followed, she began the long, quiet work of becoming whole again. Therapy, education, writing. She wrote essays about fame, vulnerability, and the myth of the lucky girl. One piece, entitled "The Face They Owned," became a cult favourite among young Danish feminists. In it, she wrote, "They photographed me, but never asked me what I thought. Now I am photographing my own thoughts with words." But the world wasn't done with her. In 1993, after years of silence, she was approached with a different kind of offer to write children's books. Not pose for them, not endorse them, but to create. The girl who once dreamed of helping children found a new way to do it. And for the first time in a long time, Reneé said yes. That same year, she gave her first major interview in over 5 years, revealing the reasons behind her vanishing act. "I didn't quit modelling because I hated it. I quit because it was swallowing me. I wanted to live a life that was mine." To some it was a retreat. To others it was a revolution. She had escaped a machine that few ever leave voluntarily. She had walked away from millions, from worship, from a legacy that could have been even larger. But she didn't care. because what she regained was far more precious: her mental health, her voice, and her right to disappear. Reneé Simonsen didn't leave the fashion world in flames. She left in silence. No swan song, no tabloid feud, no tragic downfall. Just a girl who once belonged to millions, quietly choosing to belong to herself again. In the decades since her retreat, she has lived many lives: a student, a writer, a psychologist, a mother. Her children's books became bestsellers in Denmark. Her essays are studied in university courses. She now helps young people, not by being a face on a billboard, but by listening, guiding, and reminding them they are more than what the world demands from their image. And yet her photos still linger. In vintage shops across Paris, her old Vogue covers remain preserved like relics. On online forums, fashion historians call her the prototype of real beauty. Young models whisper her name when asked who inspired them to stay human in an industry that rewards detachment. Reneé never declared herself a legend. She didn't need to. Her story, half told in silence, became a manifesto for autonomy in a machine that rarely grants it. What does it mean to win the world and walk away before it consumes you? What does it mean to be remembered, not for how loud you were, but for how gracefully you disappeared? Reneé Simonsen never tried to change fashion, but by protecting herself, she ended up doing just that.